How you guys doing today? It's Anthony Ganji. Welcome to another episode of Tear Talk. Guys, there's a great video right now that was released by, NBC Connecticut. It is about Mimi's murder, who failed her. If you guys are unfamiliar with this case, you will be familiar with it after watching this video, but that is Mimi. Just a beautiful little girl who sadly died just in silence. The system, people that should have protected her, maybe even the community around her. There's just so much here that needs to be looked at. And right now, those three, Karla, Jacqueline, and Jonathan, Anita, they've all been charged in involvement with her death because it is a murder. And it's a murder under special circumstances because this girl was tortured. She was tortured. NBC Connecticut did a great documentary that I would like to watch with you guys. It's powerful, but it highlights some concerns that I think right now we should try to see what we can do to go ahead and make the adjustments that are needed so this little girl doesn't die in vain. She got lost in the system. Something with homeschooling, child protective services. We saw a little bit of that with this young lady who we're still trying to find. Melody Buzzard, same thing. Looks like parents that are doing stuff with their children that they shouldn't be doing pull their kids out of school under the guise that they're being homeschooled. And now, where's the oversight? That's the new debate. How much oversight should be given to children that are in or that are being homeschooled? At the end of the day, whatever oversight you need to protect the child. So I would like to watch this video. Maybe stop it a few times for my reaction. But this is really about what we can do now. Mimi's Law. That's what they're working on. Something that will help provide laws for greater oversight and to protect children like Mimi who are getting lost in the system. And when I say she died in silence, what I mean by that is she was forgotten in the system. But trust me, what she went through, she was tortured. So let's play this video. This is a good account of the timeline. And then, guys, I did a video on this the other day, so I also believe you should check out this video as well. But here we go.
There are no words that can make sense of a situation like this.
It's horrifying what happened to this child.
It's overwhelming. He's a little kid. He's a little kid.
Evidence indicates that Jacqueline was the victim of prolonged physical abuse and malnourishment prior to her death.
After responding officers made their initial discovery, the property of 80 Clark Street was established as a crime scene.
Those human remains were found here on Clark Street in the backyard in a large container.
Jacqueline likely died in the fall of 2024 while her family was still residing in Farmington.
There were so many eyes on her before her death that nobody picked up on.
Jacqueline Mimi Torres-Garcia's death has raised a lot of questions.
We want to know why, what happened.
Hey, guys, I have another thing we should also look into. Property that's abandoned. I mean, is there oversight on the property? We know that a lot of people, they go into those properties, they do illegal stuff in those properties, they hide bodies in those properties. I think when we have abandoned properties, we need to kind of make sure that those properties are being still looked at by the people that own them. They should be doing some type of tours or oversight or something, and it should be documented somewhere, because obviously there may be a chance that nobody was even checking on this property where her body was discovered. And I'm sure in a lot of areas you have a lot of abandoned property and a lot of criminal activity that happens in those abandoned properties because they're just forgotten. So that's something else that needs to be looked at too. What are the responsibility of people that literally have property that has been abandoned? Are they still checking on that property? Because that property could be a hub for criminal activity.
Thank you for joining us. I'm Keisha Grant.
And I'm Mike Heideck. Horrific, heartbreaking, disturbing. Just some of the words being used to describe what happened to Jacqueline Torres-Garcia. While police work to find justice for her, it is clear something or someone failed this little girl.
Without a doubt, this case has sparked a lot of anger, not just at the people charged in her death, but at the system as well. We'll take a closer look at that coming up. But first, we want to take you through the twists and turns of this complicated case. And there are so many. We do need to warn you, the details are difficult to hear.
October 8th, 2025, an anonymous caller sending New Britain police to an abandoned property on Clark Street. What officers found set off an investigation that has shocked Connecticut and the world. The remains of a young girl, just 11 years old, found in a plastic storage container.
I don't understand. There's no way to wrap your head around this.
In the days following, pressure mounting on New Britain police to release more details. The community desperate for information.
As a mother, this makes me sick to my stomach to be standing here today with what we're about to tell you.
Those details ended up being more horrific than anyone could imagine. The little girl's name, Jacqueline Torres-Garcia, known as Mimi to her loved ones.
So guys, you saw the abandoned property, right? So again, I think that even though it's abandoned, whoever owns the property should have some level of responsibility in oversight. It cannot just be, I know we're using the word abandoned, but it really cannot just be abandoned. There should be something that makes the owner of that property responsible for things that are happening on that property. When was the last time you checked this property? Because I don't know if that's the case. I mean, do we just own property and then when we no longer want it, we just leave it there? And then we don't really care what happens to it? Ultimately, there's got to be a level of responsibility. I know they spoke to the homeowner in this case, but I would maybe talk to the homeowner and ask, when was the last time you visited your property? How long has it been just abandoned without any oversight from you? And what's good about this documentary that they did is they're going to add something that is an update for me. I did know that when Mimi was born, Karla, her mother, was in a detention center, but I didn't know what Karla's age was. So it does note that Karla was 16 when Mimi was born. Because remember, when Mimi was born, Karla was in a detention center and Mimi went right to guardianship. And they're going to talk about that timeline. So that's interesting. I didn't know that in the last video we did.
She was my love. She was everything for me.
Investigators believe she had been dead for about a year.
Jacqueline's body was kept in the family's basement and subsequently moved when the family relocated from Farmington in March of 2025.
Police saying the people responsible were those closest to Mimi. Her mother, Karla Garcia, the mother's boyfriend, Jonathan Nanita, both charged with her murder. Mimi's aunt, Jacqueline Garcia, charged with child cruelty and unlawful restraint.
No child should ever have to endure such suffering.
Search warrants released by Farmington police this week detailing that alleged suffering. In a stunning admission, Karla Garcia allegedly telling investigators she and Nanita stopped feeding Mimi for approximately 2 weeks prior to her death. Police say she also admitted to restraining Mimi with zip ties and said Jacqueline Garcia sent her a photo showing the child zip-tied on the floor. The question on everyone's mind is how. How could this have happened?
Had there been any reports that she had been missing? Had anybody raised concerns, either from school districts or anybody, about where she had been for months?
No.
The Department of Children and Families revealing the agency has been involved with this family for more than a decade.
I will say one thing. When they did ask the question and said, anybody had any involvement with her? This lady outright said no, because they know there could have been more done. So she wasn't going to put excuses out or toss blame somewhere else. She just said no, because at the end of the day, the responsibility cannot be shifted, cannot be minimized, and cannot be negated. So I thought that was just strictly what people needed to hear. Not what they wanted to hear, but what they needed to hear, because somewhere along the line, when there's that acceptance of full responsibility, now you could see people are open to change because they're not too concerned about trying to save their face in the process. She said no, and that means now we know where all our resources have to go.
Their interactions included a video call with someone Karla Garcia told DCF was her daughter, Jacqueline. But that happened in January 2025, and the medical examiner believes she had died months earlier. A neighbor says Garcia brought this up when she spoke with her before her arrest.
Well, she basically said she had somebody pretending to be her daughter.
Both DCF and the Office of the Child Advocate are conducting investigations. Meanwhile, anger is spilling over.
Get out of here, get out.
Both in the courtroom and at the memorial site. A community devastated by the loss of a beautiful little girl whose life came to a brutal end 1 year ago, and nobody seemed to notice. And that is how we got here tonight. We have new video that shows Karla Garcia's arrest.
You can see officers at the door of her apartment located on Tremont Street in New Britain. Garcia is seen being placed into handcuffs and was taken into custody on October 12th, 4 days after her daughter's remains were discovered.
The suspects in this case all had prior criminal histories. Karla Garcia, Mimi's mother, was convicted of assault in 2019. New Britain police say she repeatedly punched her ex-girlfriend in the face and grabbed her by the hair. She served 2 years probation.
Jonathan Anita was convicted in 2022 of reckless endangerment and interfering with an officer. He had been driving with Garcia when he was stopped by police. He took off from that stop and struck an officer. He was sentenced to just under 1 year in prison. Mimi's aunt, Jacqueline, was arrested in 2023 for risk of injury to a child. Her 11-month-old child had multiple bruises and broken bones when she was brought to Connecticut Children's. She was convicted and sentenced to 10 years, suspended after 18 months. But records show she served about 8 months.
So they're going to also mention quickly when she was 16 and how she gave birth to Mimi in the detention center. But real quick, this child never stood a chance. With all these backgrounds, how do we not have more oversight? And Jacqueline, her sister, is the one Jacqueline Mimi Torres-Garcia is named after. But this child, in my opinion, never had a chance. She just never had a chance. Sometimes what happens is when a child is born into the system, obviously they get taken away and they try to connect the child with family, a minimal guardian, but with family. If that's tough, they, put the child through the foster system. But then eventually when the mother comes out, a lot of them will try to get custody of their child. It could be for many reasons. Some could be to reconnect, build that bond, or some could be just because they can get government assistance. If they're getting government assistance, then the child has value to them. I'm not saying this may be the case here, but if they were getting government assistance and Mimi passed, then we better not tell anybody because we'll lose that assistance, let alone be held liable. But I don't know if they were getting government assistance. I'm just putting it out there, but that could be something worth noting, if they're getting government assistance, do people constantly check in to make sure that the money's being spent to where it needs to be spent? But I don't know if that's the case here. I'm just talking out of the context. I said when people get released. All right, so hold on.
Karla Garcia and Jonathan are being held on $5 million bond each. Jacqueline Garcia on $1 million bond. All three are due in court November 14th. A judge sealed the arrest warrants for the three of them until October 28th. We should learn more about the case once those are unsealed.
The custody timeline in this case is important, so let's take you back to the beginning. Jacqueline Mimi Torres-Garcia was born January 29, 2013 at Hartford Hospital. Her mother, Karla Garcia, was 16 years old, and family members have said she was in a detention center at the time. So Mimi's paternal grandmother became her legal guardian and remained in her care until 2022. In May of that year, a court reinstated guardianship for her biological parents, Karla and Mimi's father. He applied for joint custody the next year, alleging that Karla was not honoring their agreement. In June 2024, Karla and Jacqueline Garcia and Jonathan Nanita and the children moved to Farmington, and Karla was granted sole custody. The judge who made that ruling noted that Mimi's father did not appear at that hearing. Karla Garcia filed paperwork 2 months later withdrawing Mimi from New Britain schools, saying she intended to homeschool her. We learned from search warrants that Karla told her sister that Mimi died September 19, 2024. Her body found a year later.
So when we were talking about the Melody Buzzard case, because I think we did the Melody Buzzard case first. Let me just double check on that, because that's where we started to see, oh no, actually, sorry. No, it was. We did the Melody Buzzard case first. We started seeing concerns with homeschooling and accountability. So what I'm wondering is when, and I guess this is something we have to figure out, and I think they're trying to figure it out, is when a child is taken out of school to homeschool, and what goes into play at that point, especially when it comes to oversight. I know there are some families that do the homeschool and they don't want to have the oversight, but you need it, because obviously I think this could be a great way for someone who's abusing a child to keep that child hidden. Because let's be honest, school outside of serving educational function is also the first area that we believe would take notice if there's problems in the home. That's why the professionals have to report stuff, because that may be the only avenue outside of the family where you could get a report. But then when you remove that element, how do you balance that? So you want to have homeschool, I get it. So here's the curriculum, but also what this is the oversight we're going to provide. We will still have to be involved with that child once a week or twice a week to check in, because there's another level of accountability that schools have that help our children. So I think this is definitely a good discussion that one is needed, but two will highlight the importance of schools and their greater function outside of just educational service providers. Okay, hold on one second.
For most of Mimi's short life, she was with her grandparents. We spoke to them about who Mimi was and the lengths her mother allegedly went to hide a horrible secret.
Right now, we got the heart broke.
Tremendous heartache in the wake of a senseless tragedy. In the days following the discovery of his granddaughter Mimi's body, Felix Osorio says she was really more like a daughter to him.
Like a father to her, because she was on our house from the first month she came to the war.
The little girl's grandparents say they often tried to visit Mimi or even just speak with her, but they faced excuses from Karla Garcia every time.
So then she told me, I will call you when they come out. And then I was waiting for the call. And I called back and she said, oh, they are sleeping. I cannot show it to you right now. I will do it tomorrow.
Siempre tenía una excusa, siempre tenía algo que decir que no nos dejaba verla.
Osorio says Mimi's father also tried to see his daughter, but was also turned away.
My son called her, go to her house, say, Mimi don't want to see you today.
Stunned by their loss, Mimi's grandparents are now remembering the bright, energetic little girl they last saw in 2023.
She was happy all the time, real happy. She liked to play. She liked to, everywhere she was jumping.
Ella era bien happy, era bien feliz con nosotros. Ella, sí, ella nos amaba. En realidad nos amaba y siempre voy a estar.
And we have been working around the clock to find out more about who this little girl known as Mimi was. Doris Bardales from our sister station, Telemundo Nueva Inglaterra, has been speaking with those who live in her old neighborhood in New Britain.
It's difficult to watch this video without feeling a sense of loss. Mimi appears happy, well cared for, and loved. This video of a birthday celebration was taken while she was in the care of her father's family. Jacqueline Torres-García attended Chamberlain Elementary School from kindergarten until 5th grade. Records indicate that while Jacqueline was still attending school, her mother, Karla Garcia, and her other children lived at an apartment complex on Church Street in New Britain. Juan Brito, an employee at a nearby bodega, recalls seeing Jacqueline walking in the area and buying items.
Siempre yo la miré, ella venía aquí muy tranquila.
I always saw her. She was very calm. She didn't talk much, but she was always very calm. She would just come in, buy stuff, and then she would leave.
Brito says it might have been over a year since he and others who worked at the local bodega last saw Jacqueline. He describes her as a quiet girl who mostly kept to herself. There were times she visited alone and other times accompanied by a younger sibling. The visits to the store were quite frequent.
Algo muy triste. It's something very sad. Very sad because she was a little girl.
Those who knew Jacqueline look back at this picture and remember her as a bright light with a radiant smile. Her favorite food, says her grandmother, was steak and lobster. At this time, the family has chosen not to speak publicly as they are currently involved in a custody case concerning Jacqueline's younger sibling. In Britain, Doris Bardales, NBC Connecticut News.
Now, hours before Jacqueline's mother, Karla Garcia, was arrested, she allegedly spoke to a neighbor who lives in the same apartment building.
That neighbor sat down with NBC Connecticut's Jane Chaco to share what she learned about Mimi's murder. Jane.
So this is going to be about the podcast that Karla was trying to basically move forward with this one lady. I think her last name is White, and usually that's probably done because she wanted to create a narrative before it got out there. She wanted to claim that she was the one that was grieving. But yet you tortured your child, didn't feed your child for 2 weeks. So when I first heard about the podcast, I was a little upset because I thought the podcaster was jumping on a story just to get the views or the clicks. But it looks like the podcaster really didn't know the depth of what happened. So she may have been willing, but she didn't understand exactly who she was dealing with. But with that said, this is just a way for Karla to get ahead of the narrative. And most likely what I think she would have done was she could have painted herself as a victim and tossed everything on the boyfriend, Jonathan Natina. I think that's what she was looking to do because she was so open to saying that even after all this, he was the main person that did everything. So she would probably play the victim to some level of control or coercion that he had on her to minimize her involvement, which we see a lot lately. I don't know, but we may see that with the Jake Harrow, Rebecca Harrow case too. That's coming out of Riverside County in Cali. But now you got, just a bunch of blame shifting. All right, let me play it again.
Mike and Keisha, that conversation started with a mother's sympathy for another, and that neighbor says the more they talked, the more questions she had. The home address listed on Karla Garcia's arrest report is this building in New Britain. Kimberly White says she met Garcia earlier this year when their children started to play together.
Really good friends, like bread and butter.
White says her conversations with Garcia were brief and friendly, usually about the kids. When human remains of a girl were discovered on Clark Street, White heard Garcia could be involved.
She owed me some answers because I've never even met this little girl.
The two were talking about doing an episode for White's podcast. A search warrant from Farmington Police reveals Garcia told a detective she was about to go on a podcast prior to her arrest on October 12th, and she wrote notes of the story on her cell phone so she could reference them for the podcast. Before the recording, Garcia sent White a text message that NBC Connecticut obtained a copy of. We then verified Garcia's phone number with the family member.
I think this all is important because this relates to conspiracy or premeditation. So I think it's actually good that we have the notes because this is her story after the fact. So a lot of people think this is the consciousness of guilt playing out, so at the end of the day, you can't say you weren't guilty because you were trying to create a narrative that was going to paint you in a better perspective. So I think that's actually very important to this case. Some people may think how relevant it is. It's relevant because it's a way to control the narrative and provide that consciousness of guilt that they knew what they were doing the whole time. And now they're trying to cover it up, or she is.
The text read in part, quote, "I want to apologize to my daughter for failing her as a mother and being afraid to speak to anyone about the situation." Another part said, quote, "There's nothing in this world that will ever make me accept the fact that she's no longer here. My heart is broken for her siblings, her father, her family. I'm sorry." White says she and a friend went upstairs to
You notice how she kind of plays victim to the situation. And I think that's related to how she claims that the man was in control of John. So I think they'll all probably be represented by separate lawyers. Kind of what you saw again in the Manuel Harrow case. They're all going to have their own separate lawyers. I can easily see already they're all going to go ahead and point the blame on each other. And I think if I was to work this case, I would work with Jacqueline, the sister, because she has the least involvement that we know of. We don't know until we see the arrest warrants. But technically, from what I see right now, she kind of just did not do what she should have done to protect the child. But you really want to get the people that were responsible equally for the death of that child. So if you have Karla turning against the father, or the boyfriend, Karla turning against the boyfriend, then the boyfriend takes the main responsibility. We don't want that. I think you can get Jacqueline to put some angle that probably tells the truth about how equally involved the Karla was and Jonathan, and then see what happens from there. Even though Jacqueline does have culpability, at the end of the day, we want the people that were responsible for this child's death, the torture, both of them to be held at the same level of accountability. So if the mother tries to push blame on the boyfriend, then you got the neutralizer here that's going to come in and say, nah, they both were involved because they both know, because I sent a text to Karla letting her know that your daughter's going to die. And they're going to lean on that. They're going to say it looked like she tried to do something, but it wasn't enough. She didn't call the police. She didn't do anything that would have been a proper course of action. Instead, she called her sister and probably said, hey, you better watch what you're doing here because that child is going to die. And then hoping that, maybe she would talk to the boyfriend, because that could be a thing. Maybe she's trying to tell her sister, hey, your boyfriend's going a little bit too far with this. You better do something. But at the end of the day, no one did nothing. So that text to me was maybe her telling her sister, watch out. But now the text has been exposed. So now you can see which way you're going to go. And I have a feeling it's her sister telling Karla, hey, you guys are going too far. Talk to your boyfriend, whatever, do what you got to do. But technically what you should have did, as I said, was call the authorities the moment you saw that. That's unacceptable.
do the episode. Garcia ended up backing out of doing the podcast, but White says she still wanted answers.
We just started doing a bad cop, good cop type of thing, asking her questions. And that's when I was aware that the little girl was dead since September of 2024. So my best friend was like, well, nobody ever wondered where the little girl was when they came over. So she basically said she had somebody pretending to be her daughter. At that point, me and my best friend looked at each other like, yeah, no, there's something wrong.
Garcia was arrested the evening of October 12th, charged with murdering her own daughter. Looking back, White says she shouldn't have let Garcia watch her son.
I could see the angle here too. The mother could say that she did all this because she was afraid if she didn't cover it up, because she's pointing to the boyfriend, that he would kill her or their other child. I'm sure she could put the other child, and maybe that's part of the investigation we have with the other child. I don't know, but I could see her saying that I had to do these things because if I didn't, he would have killed me and our other child. I could see all this being played out. All right, let me play.
I just wish that I had a better judge of character, because I couldn't do nothing but pray because of my son. Like, you know, my son was up there. Anything could have happened to my baby. She didn't seem like a monster. She seemed like a high-spirited young lady.
White moved into Garcia's apartment building back in April of this year, and she says she never saw Jacqueline with Karla. And that follows the police department's timeline. They determined Jacqueline died in the fall of 2024. Mike and Keisha.
Jane Chaco, thank you.
So for most of Jacqueline's life, DCF was involved with her family.
And now they are facing tough questions about if more could have been done to protect her.
There's still a lot of questions we're trying to get answered about that.
Coming up next, what we're learning from the department under fire. Plus,
the preventable death of a child, like what we've seen here with Mimi, is just the worst kind of tragedy that a family and a community can face.
We're hearing from the former child advocate about changes that could come at the state level in the wake of Mimi's death. Stay with me.
I think it is horrible and horrific, and my heart breaks for Jacqueline and what she went through.
Lawmakers continue to look for answers, and DCF is once again under the microscope as details continue to come out about their interactions with Mimi's family. This is the second high-profile case this year where the department has come under fire.
back in March, it was revealed a Waterbury man was allegedly held captive for 20 years, and now his stepmother is facing charges. The department recently did a review of that case and determined it had followed protocols in place at the time.
Now, reviews are underway of the state's previous involvement with the family of Jacqueline Torres-Garcia. NBC Connecticut's Matt Austin is here now with more. Matt.
Yeah, so Mike and Keisha, DCF calls this a, quote, horrible tragedy and says it is striving to be as transparent as possible. But there are now worries from the community and bipartisan lawmakers that DCF failed Jacqueline Torres-Garcia.
I never really understood what be as transparent as possible, like that as possible. Why are we qualifying that statement? Just, or trying. Why is the word trying before that? We're being transparent. That's the only, those other words, trying and as possible, kind of minimize. It should be we are being transparent as opposed to we are trying to be as transparent as possible. Because then if I was in bed, I'd be like, is there more that you have to say that you don't want to say, that you choose not to say? Because I'm definitely feeling there's something you're not telling us because you're trying, and then you got as possible.
Early 2025. That's when the Department of Children and Families thought they last saw Jacqueline Mimi Torres-Garcia during a video call. But according to police, the girl actually died in the fall of 2024.
Do you think the system overall failed Jacqueline?
Absolutely. Completely failed her.
So far publicly, DCF has only provided written statements, but they have talked with lawmakers as reviews get underway. Senator Cece Marr is the co-chair of the legislature's Children's Committee.
Is the hope to try to prevent something like this from happening again?
110%, of course. We never want this to happen, and nor did DCF want this to happen.
After lots of emails back and forth,
There are still so many unanswered questions about DCF's involvement. So we've come here to DCF's office
in Hartford. We were looking to talk with someone in person.
Hi there, I'm Matt Austin with NBC Connecticut. We're doing a story about the death of Jacqueline Torres-Garcia, and there's still a lot of questions we're trying to get answered about that, about how it happened.
Security told us we needed to call the department for an interview. In a statement, a staffer told us, "We are in the process of reviewing our past history with the family consistent with our standard practice. We will not be conducting any on-camera interviews at this time." Back in January 2013, DCF says it was first involved with the family when Jacqueline was born and her mother was in a detention center. Then in September of 2022, an investigation into Jacqueline's younger siblings started, and DCF says it later determined Jacqueline and her siblings were safe, enrolled in school, and their medical provider did not express concerns. DCF did provide the family help and in November closed the case.
I definitely want to know in chronological order every step along the way.
From the fall of 2022 through Jacqueline's death, believed to be in 2024, DCF says for those 2 years, it was not involved with the family and it, quote, did not receive any reports of child abuse or neglect regarding the family.
Had there been any reports that she had been missing? Had anybody raised concerns, either from school districts or anybody, about where she had been for months?
No.
In January 2025, DCF says it got involved with the family again amid allegations concerning a younger sibling. There was a video call with someone Karla Garcia allegedly claimed was Mimi and that her daughter was being homeschooled and staying with a relative out of state. Again, police say Garcia only later confessed the girl had actually been dead at the time of the call.
You know, I wonder, as I mentioned, just to reiterate, again, I don't know if we saw the same thing with Rebecca Harrow and Jacob Harrow, but do you have a mother who's choosing the love of her man and basically sacrificing the child? Because remember, Rebecca Harrow made a false story. Was that in a way to cover up her man? The false story that she made up, probably being influenced by Jake, but she's the one that told the story because she may have been more believable at the time because of Jake's history. You know, and then now you have this case here where, you know, now you got maybe the mother who tried to organize someone to pretend that they're Jacqueline. I mean, these are things that we do to protect someone that's abusing our kids, especially as a mother. Again, just food for thought. I mean, but it seems like a lot of these things are starting to trend. Okay, hold on.
You need a photograph of that child in the case files so that when we're having something like this, then we know who we're looking at.
Now, a state hearing about all this is expected in several months once the investigations are done. It's worth it to point out that for 32 years, the Department of Children and Families had been under federal court oversight amid beliefs the system was broken. That review ended in 2022. The judge, plaintiffs, and DCF commissioner at the time credited a 3-decade-long turnaround, including hiring an adequate workforce, caseload limits, and placing more children with family instead of being bounced around in foster care. And during the oversight.
And guys, that's important too, because their family doesn't mean that's the best person for them. I know the mother takes the strongest amount of rights to that child, but all because the mother wants the child doesn't mean the mother's the best person for that child. But sometimes that's the thing, right? It's got to be we want to keep it with the mother as best we can because we want the child and the mother to develop a strong relationship. It's good for the child. It's good for the child. Is it though? Or are we just sticking with the narrative that we want the child to be with the family because that's on the surface what we feel is best? But technically, I think that's got to be revisited a little bit too. And you notice prior, the woman saying, yeah, why didn't we have a picture of what Jacqueline looked like? So I'm wondering who was the person playing Jacqueline. You know, maybe they did have a picture, but the girl looked like her, or how far off were the two? I would love to see. I don't know if we'll be able to because maybe they're minors, but who was the girl playing Jacqueline? How do you not have a picture of the person you're trying to check on? I wonder if the person playing Jacqueline even looked like Jacqueline. That's interesting. Didn't think of that before. Covered a lot in the last video we did on this, but I didn't think of that.
the number of kids in DCF care dropped in half. And now I want to bring in my colleague, Mike Savino. And Mike, you've been looking at the state and how it has been funding DCF over the recent years.
Yes, and certainly we've heard plenty about the blame that's been put on DCF, but it has been an agency that's been dealing with some staffing woes. So let's take a look at some numbers. The state budgeted about $270 million in 2017 for all DCF staff. So that's not just caseworkers. And that number actually was going down through 2022 when you just heard about that increase that they've seen in recent years. But over that 10 years, that's just an 11% increase in funding, when state spending overall has jumped by 33%. And the agency told me today that about 30% of new social workers leave in their first year. So lawmakers will definitely be talking about more oversight, but probably funding as well. And then there will likely be a third conversation, one that started after the 2017 death of Matthew Tirado, who was pulled from his public school only to be abused.
What we are concerned about are the people that use the homeschooling system to hide what they're doing to their children.
Some Democrats are renewing their calls for more oversight when families pull their kids out of public school, but that's drawing pushback from homeschooling families.
Frustrating when it is becoming that political pawn.
The Office of the Child Advocate has recommended multiple times that this.
All right, so this was discussed in the last video. Let's not make this a complex problem. You need oversight, because if it could just save one child, it could save one child. I don't think this is a political move. Don't hide behind it like it is a political move. You need the oversight. You need the oversight, because if there's a chance that homeschooling could be that wolf in sheep's clothing, then you need people there to make sure that there is no wolf. So for anybody that's against this, knowing that this could be the potential for an outcome, then shame on you. If there's a chance that some oversight is needed because we could save more children, then that's what has to be done. It's a non-negotiable. It's a non-negotiable. Don't make this a political battle. Children's safety are on the line. School are our first resources when it comes to the safety of our children. Don't make this a political battle where it becomes more confusing and nothing moves. Just at the end of the day, this is what's going to be done. You want your child to get this, this is what has to be done, and these are the reasons, and it's a non-negotiable.
State require homeschool families to check in with their local school districts annually.
The caregiver here may not have opted to do that because there would have been some follow-up that they were expecting.
But thousands of opponents descended on the Capitol during a May hearing to voice their opposition. Some critics say the state should focus on fixing DCF.
And these kids should have been found out a lot sooner than they were. And it's more a problem with DCF, I would say, than the homeschool community.
Others are open to a one-time visit from the state, but they don't agree with mandatory visits to schools that they think are part of the problem.
So I want to mention one more thing, guys. This either or, that's BS. Don't get caught in either or, because either or is politics. Somewhere along the line, there's in the middle, because at the end, there's a middle ground, because at the end of the day, there's layers of fail safes. We need to have fail safes. We have to understand that all the systems we put in place are made by humans, and humans are bound to make mistakes. So we always have to prepare for that other layer. So at the end of the day is, okay, you're not going to put everything on DCF and you're not going to put everything on home, but together you can. Because together they can fill in the gaps that one can't do alone. So this isn't about either or. It's about putting in a layered system. At the end of the day, after you have a death of a child like this that has been prolonged, we shouldn't be saying, well, it's not this party's fault or it's not that party's fault. No, it's both combined. So how do you work together to ensure that this doesn't happen again? This is about working together and not pushing blame. So again, layers. Everything should have layers, because at the end of the day, we know our systems are never going to be perfect. We could strive to be, but they're never going to be perfect. So what are the layers you put in place to protect the system right above it or the system right below it? Simple.
Little ironic that the institutions that are struggling with education are going to judge what we're doing or how we're doing it.
But proponents of an annual check-in don't consider this taking away the rights of homeschool families.
I have no interest in regulating curriculum for homeschoolers. I have no interest in anything more than child welfare.
And that was Mike Savino reporting. As you saw, we spoke with Sarah Egan, but we went in depth with her. She was Connecticut's child advocate for more than a decade. She has returned to resume her work at the Hartford-based Center for Children's Advocacy. It calls itself the largest children's legal rights organization in all of New England.
And that is where she spoke with our chief investigator, Len Bestoff. Sarah Egan headed the investigations into some of the state's worst abuse cases from 2013 to 2024. Len, I imagine you had a lot to talk about with her.
Oh my gosh, so much to unpack there, lots of ground to cover. But what we want to talk about here is Sarah Egan's understanding of the Department of Children and Families guidelines for conducting video interviews to assess a child's well-being. In Mimi Garcia's case, it appears her family used an imposter in a video call when Mimi was already dead.
Virtual visits are not the norm in investigations.
Former Connecticut child advocate Sarah Egan tells us the protocol for DCF caseworkers is to do these well-being checks in person and multiple times, and that caregivers of the child are also assessed.
Are virtual visits ever permitted with children? Again, the strong default requirement is no. DCF policy does allow for virtual visits in more extraordinary circumstances.
Egan adds that in most cases, the DCF file on a child will have pictures of the girl or boy and their families. But there may be other factors at play, such as caseworker turnover.
It is not uncommon for a family who comes back to DCF's attention to have a new caseworker and a new supervisor, right? And that creates opportunities, but it also creates challenges for continuity and for understanding the issues and the needs and risks in that family system.
Egan emphasizes most visits are done in person, something even getting tracked post-COVID.
Because that's been an issue that has concerned policymakers, and they've drafted bills to require visits to be in person. And the department has issued strong assurances to policymakers that they conduct their visits in person with children and families. So I think this is an unusual disclosure that I'm sure policymakers will want to hear and understand more about.
We have reached out to the DCF about its video call protocols, and we have not heard back. Earnest discussions about this topic will hopefully be part of the legacy that Mimi Garcia leaves. To that point, Egan said she and others will be advocating in the upcoming legislative session for more transparency when cases like this get investigated.
Well, Lynn, you mentioned a call for more transparency. What kinds of things might Egan and others ask for in detail?
One of the things is when you have an extreme case like this, like Mimi Garcia's, or it's just extreme abuse or neglect, the agency will do an investigation, especially if they knew the perpetrators beforehand, the alleged perpetrators, and they're talking about making these reports more open and with a definite timeline, like maybe 3 or 4 months, where the public can actually view it.
Wow. Okay. Len Bestoff, thank you.
You can watch the extended version of Len's interview with Sarah Egan right now on our NBC Connecticut YouTube channel. Just scan that QR code. It will take you there.
Clearly, there's still so many unanswered questions. We'll continue to follow this story. We thank you for watching. Good night.
Excellent video. That was a great video. Guys, so then the question here right now, I'll leave you with, is we're going to do more to prevent, but that's also in our reaction. Reactions lead to good, strong preventions. And I think that if we all work on taking some level of ownership, and not necessarily saying that we were directly responsible for starving a child and the child dying after 2 weeks of being tortured, but rather were there things in play that made it possible for someone to do that? That is prolonged torture because they felt comfortable that they can do it, because they felt comfortable that they weren't going to be checked. That's how comfortable they felt. They did all this because they knew that no one was going to check on them. And you know who else knew that? Mimi. Once Mimi knew they were doing this, Mimi knew that nobody would be able to protect her, because that's why the family was able to do it, because the family also knew that nobody would be there to protect her. Karla, Jacqueline, and Jonathan. As always, guys, Tear Talk, stay safe.